You just need to unmute yourself and say hello, sir. Sorry, sir, I think I muted you by mistake. Could you please?
Yeah, you are hearing me?
Right, sir. Loud and clear. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So everything is set. Right.
Hello.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Just give me 1 second. Okay, great. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another session of the COVID-19 Academy. The COVID-19 Academy is a joint collaboration of UNICEF India, WHO India, HCL Foundation, and Sphere India. And today we are holding a panel discussion on floods in context of COVID-19. So as India approaches the monsoon season, it is pertinent to discuss how different actors will be responding to floods, keeping in mind the considerations posed by COVID-19 in the months to come. This panel discussion will deliberate on themes such as adaptation of standards, practices, and policies in the context of overlapping hazards, strengthening systemic capacity and available mechanisms for coordinated preparedness and response, leadership and networking to ensure delivery of transitional services, pre-positioning of supplies and utilization of surge capacity, need for humanitarian architecture, and the further call for action. For this today, we have with us Mr. Anil Sinha, who was the founder, vice chairman of Bihar State Disaster Management Authority, and he established the ethos of the organization, lending to it its vision, goals, and leadership. As Joint Secretary in charge of disaster management in Government of India, he handled major disasters such as Odisha super cyclone 1999, Bhuj Gujarat earthquake 2001, and others. Earlier, he founded NIDM at the national level and International Recovery Platform IRP, UNDP in Kobe, Japan at the global level. We have with us, welcome, Mr. Anil. We have with us also Dr. Bhanu Pratap Mall. Dr. Bhanu is the founder, member secretary of PGBS, chair UPIAG, and vice chairperson Sphere India. He has over 30 years of professional career experience highlighted by progressive advancement and consistent achievement within government and non-government, national and international funded initiatives in the field of CBDR and environmental sanitation and sustainable development. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Tapan Mahapatra, who works as a regional program officer in DG ECHO for South Asia. Over the past 20 years, he has led the crisis response and DRR programs of DG ECHO in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. His contribution to digitalizing humanitarian response, the community-led approach, is well recognized by many humanitarian actors. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Govind Dash, who is an MSW from the Asian Institute of Social Science, Berhampur, and he co-founded the NGO Gram Uttan in the year 1990 in Odisha. He has been leading the organization since then. He has been engaged in humanitarian response since 1999 super cyclone and has experience as well as expertise in rescue operations, relief, and rehabilitation. Our last panelist for today is Mr. Luit Goswami. Mr. Luit is the director at Rural Volunteer Center in Assam. He started as a volunteer at RVC in 1989 and moved to the position of director in 2014. He has been leading RVC for COVID-19 pandemic response for DDMA Dhemaji and ASDMA. He was also the founder member of Assam State IAG in 2004 and continues to be a core member. I would like to introduce also our moderator, Mr. Sarbjit Sahota, who is an architect and urban planner with over 25 years of professional experience working in frontline humanitarian and development agencies. He currently works with UNICEF India as a disaster risk reduction specialist. I'm now going to hand this over to Mr. Sarbjit to please take the session ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valerie. Am I audible?
Right, sir, you're audible.
Thank you. All the online friends, I don't know how many have joined, but maybe Valerie, you can tell me. All
20,
about.
20 have joined.
Mhm.
Total of 20.
Okay, excellent. Um, so, as Valerie mentioned, we have an excellent and eminent panel, very well informed uh, panel to deliberate on the issue of how do we handle floods in the COVID context. COVID risk is not only a global pandemic, but it has led to many other pandemics, and it's been a fairly complicated issue. I won't get into the details because we have a very eminent panel to discuss all that. But what remains a fact is that COVID risk is not going to go away very soon. We will have multiple overlapping hazards during this period. So how do we really manage, prepare for, and address the evolving vulnerabilities, the emerging needs, and also sometimes uh, working on the trade-offs, because not all the time we'll be able to do everything. So what do we need? What are the sort of multi-criteria trade-offs? I know it's not very good to say that we'll not do something and we'll focus more on something else, but that remains as a fact in emergency programming, that more than often we would concentrate on few important things. For example, during recent responses to uh, COVID in the slum situations in Mumbai and other cities, we did take an informed decision that social distancing is not practically feasible. So, what are the other strategies which are available? So, the personal hygiene, the hand washing, the using of masks. So then we focus more on those two strategies. So those kind of trade-offs will be very important during the emergency response in the COVID context. And also,
No voice, can't hear Sarbjit.
Sarbjit sir, are you there? We cannot hear you.
And video has also frozen.
Right. There must be a connectivity issue. Let's just wait for a few seconds. Sir, sir, are you able to hear us? Okay, let me just call him. Sarbjit sir, are you there? I see you have muted your phone, muted your device.
oh God.
Right, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Govind Dash from Orissa. Mr. Govind, if you so just for the benefit of all the participant and the panelists, please try to provide focused and sharp answers to the questions which we'll ask, and try to conclude your answers in 3 to 4 minutes for each of the questions. We'll have 2 rounds of questions to each participant, each panelist. And so the first question to Mr. Govind Dash is that in Orissa, so give us some insights from the ground zero, as if I may call so. In Orissa, in districts where you're working, what are the big challenges, fears, and opportunities with respect to the complex situation of floods in COVID context? So over to Mr. Govind Dash.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. I am audible. I am audible.
Yes, 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 please.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. So, related to Odisha, one thing I will say here, the COVID-19 given a lot of challenges in Odisha. For example, That is, we will see high level of economic risk at every level, in all levels. Economics paralyzed of migrant peoples, small scale business also damaged, and the small and marginal farmers also lost their entire business and activities, and basically fish farmers and rural artisans suffered a lot. So access to healthcare also, because see, in COVID-19, everybody run after the corona, nobody run after any diseases. Like we think there is no disease except corona in the state, I think. And also challenge assessing social security. This is the basically in COVID. Just during the COVID-19, we face Odisha coastal, some district face Amphan cyclone. Cyclone affected more than 4 districts, Kendrapada, Bhadrak, Baleshwar, Mayurbhanj, and some part of Bhadrak, Baleshwar district are severely affected by Amphan cyclone. By the way, 44 lakhs of peoples in 89 blocks are affected mostly. More than 9 lakhs of the people and affected. So basically, 5,335 houses damaged. So crop is 1 lakh hectare of the crop completely losses due to cyclone. This is the basically challenge. After the one thing, another one challenge came to Odisha. Now we are running with the challenges. Second thing, how we face the challenges. Basically, major challenge to identify is the shelter to shelterless. You need minimum 45,000 shelter already damaged in Odisha coast districts. Second, the livelihood restoration also one challenge is if you will feel that all available livelihoods, migrant livelihoods, small farmers livelihoods, fishermen's livelihoods, migrant livelihoods, and also the renovate, repair of broken toilets. You will see most of toilets damaged. Last year we faced Fani, then COVID-19, then Amphan cyclone. Just rain also started. So this is also very, very challenging. Another one thing, opportunities is very, very also very appreciable. Learning to new challenges, unexpected future changes, time management, adoption of a new situation and product expansion, new business opportunity explore. For example, virtual marketing. This is the learnings. Second thing, what your question says, gaps. There are 4 or 5 gaps I identified. Creating awareness, necessary awareness mechanism, enabling system for migrant workers, unorganized sector workers, daily wage laborers, and farming communities. This is the awareness creating is required. Another ineffective preparedness to deal with COVID-19. Lot of preparedness is required to how to face, how to cope up. And a lack of prompt response with the information and awareness raising on all level. Now people's mindset should be changed and should be cope up. And identify the risk faced by the vulnerable groups drinking during lockdown and shutdown period. In Odisha, you see Saturday and Sunday shutdown is going on.
May I request you to wind up your answer?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. This is my situation in the state of Odisha now.
Thank you. Thank you, Das. I think it's very clear that we are already seeing multiple hazards which are overlapping, and Mr. Das also mentioned about some of the gaps in terms of knowledge, awareness, and his plea for inclusion of migrants in all responses. I think it's very important. Now I'll move to Dr. Bhanu. And Dr. Bhanu, tell us from your experience of working as a humanitarian worker as well as leading the the intelligence groups at different points in time in Uttar Pradesh. Amongst the preparedness strategies for floods, one of the most important one is pre-positioning of supplies, capacity locally. Why? Because floods happen in remote villages and in different sort of remote districts. So what is the nature and scope of various preparedness strategies do you see, including pre-positioning, to address availability of supplies and utilization of surge capacity to address floods in the COVID context? So to see you in a mask, that's a clear message. Over to you, Dr. Bhanu.
Thank you, Sarbjit Sahab. In fact, what we are having a wide variety of area, like some coastal area, we are covered by Himalayan areas are there in our system, and at the same time, the central plain is also there in our country. Now, if we look at all these things, our pre-positioning has to be very, very different from any other place, whatever it is. What I feel today, in presence of COVID, I need not say anything before Sinha Sahab because he has taught all those things to us. How complex emergencies need to be dealt with. And in this complex situation, where the flood is already on the way, where early warning system for lightning is placed in the country, but in fact, we don't see people getting saved that much, what could be. Similarly, snake bite is also there. In UP itself, we see more than 500 people died because of a snake bite, and which all is preventable. By pre-positioning. Pre-positioning could be anything, maybe this serum, snake bite serum could be one thing, the anti-snake venom, and then early warning system, proper early warning system, if it is given, we can prevent lightning cases and death due to lightning and thunder. So these things are very important, but what complex is, because these things were even earlier also there. Now, COVID has made it more difficult because one is health system is involved into this. The second is non-health, or you can say it is a non-pharmaceutical intervention, which is important. And it is not being taken care the way it should have been taken care. Earlier also, I have been talking to people that the non-health intervention is so important and so good. It could be managed, it could have been done, our priority initiative, but probably we did it. Like we say, government is also doing Sphere India and UNICEF continuously. I mean, this today's deliberation is also because of that COVID Academy, and COVID Academy continuously trying to take care of this need of community as well as country. But what I am finding again, that when you come to the ground level situations are little more different. One, you might have seen, as my Govindji was telling, that migrants are there in millions and millions across the country, and these migrants have made more specific this pre-positioning things. Things should have been pre-positioned, but it was not. Now in this entire process, I would say that maintaining distance, keeping things in such a way that it works. Maybe there are many things which are pre-positioned, but it may not work because the kind of chaos we are going to have in coming days. When we say that community spread is there. But what after community spread? After community spread, it is endemic stage. Now, in endemic stage, you may see lots of people facing various kinds of difficulties. Even dead bodies you might see at certain places. I mean, this is not terrifying anybody, but being a doctor, I can visualize how things are in earlier endemic and pandemic things. In a village, you are having 2, 3, 4 dead bodies, and then normal people are also, or even the sick people are also there, spending hours together with them. So all these things, to me, is making it complex. The second thing which is very important here for pre-positioning is, one cycle you might be seeing that there is a pandemic of COVID, and we are passing through transition phase. And after passing through transition phase, second peak might come. Even the third peak might come. So the second peak and third peak is there. You need to take all precautions of awareness, then education, training people, volunteers, like preparedness. So different cycles will be repeated in the same time. So it's not like earlier situation, earlier pre-positioning process where single disaster is there, single hazard is there, and we have dealt with, and after some time we are free. Here it is a long-term process, and in this long-term process, the complexity arises because of continuously we have to see phases. At one point of time, different phases we will see, and then with different disasters, and we may have to deal with different disasters. So that pre-positioning we need to understand. And I think in the next question, when I'll come with few more things, how different states have done it, how IAGs are doing it. So as of now, it's over from me.
Thank you, Dr. Bhanu. I think it was very clear that pre-positioning alone will not work. We need tighter planning. We need more informed pre-positioning and more sort of locally informed, and also continuity of supply chain. It's and things will evolve into different phases, and we might see a next phase very soon on COVID as well. So thank you for that. To address all these, may I request now Tapan Mahapatra to give us his perspective on what would you recommend for adaptation of the humanitarian standards, practices, and policies, government policies in the context of overlapping hazards. Over to you, Mr. Mahapatra. Tapan, are you there?
Sorry, thanks, Sarbjit. I had a last. Let me to start with the way you started. Yeah, we need to really thoroughly review all the standard procedures and our contingency plan in the next coming disasters when this COVID is in between. I don't want to refer the things you already mentioned about the physical distancing, about the improved sanitation in community centers, or protect the first responders or frontline workers. I'll speak few points which often we ignore and probably can make a lot of sense while revising or adapting these standards in terms of COVID pandemic. So first I'll speak about the early warning messages. We really need to think from the very beginning, the early warning messages, we need to adapt it. We can't, no more we can say let's go to the evacuation center to the community. If I see in Bangladesh during the Amphan, the humanitarian country team made a survey and came out that's 25% of the population who were at risk area were not responding to the early warning. Similarly, in Tokyo, in April flood 2020, government requested the residents to stay at home or the friend's house rather than coming to the evacuation centers. So I'm sure in India also in rural situations, the similar situation will come, and outsiders or even people will not move to the evacuation center. Probably we need to adapt that. Second point, I would like to add this, the response for the humanitarian workers has to be with minimum physical interaction. Earlier, we used to go, the frontline workers used to go to the community and start doing all the need assessment and relief distribution. Probably this time we really the same, and physical distancing and minimum physical interaction. Some new methodology has to come out, how to respond to the crisis and save the life and their sufferings. If I recall this, in 2020 February flood in Japan, local government suspended almost 220,000 volunteers coming from outside in a area. So similarly here, this community and the local authorities probably will not be entertaining this frontline workers coming from outside. So we need another point there. We really need to think about in-kind relief distribution to something like already we have initiated in the humanitarian response, that digitally transfer cash intervention if markets are working or wherever is feasible. So in-kind distribution really need to think once again, unless it is really needed or this markets is not functioning. We need to think about adapting the IEC materials to look into this real need at this point, which is also the mental health and psychosocial messages or the COVID-related messages, along with our regular IEC materials. So we need to some adaptation into that. We need to think some sensitive, COVID-sensitive logistic approach while delivering the relief materials. We need to be, humanitarian organization need to think about COVID-sensitive procurement or handling mechanism, relief handling mechanisms than what we used to do earlier as a traditional way. Nowadays, this new idea is coming about the greening humanitarian supply chain. Probably we need to also explore that opportunities. Really, we need to think about reducing the environmental carbon footprint. It's a time to think once again for the virtual visits and monitoring rather than going physically, going the way we are coordinating nowadays or we are interacting. Probably some sorts of such methodology we have to evolve. The normal traditional JRNA system, I think we need to really think it. We can't no more primary data collection way JRNA. We can continue. We need to think some remote assessment by community feedback, the way Assam and West Bengal and Odisha did after the cyclone Amphan. Some sorts of like that community feedback to assess the humanitarian needs. Then you make it with the secondary information. You can triangulate and try to make some sorts of need assessment. We really need to, this is the time to really put it forward, the early actions or anticipatory actions, proactively reduce the vulnerability from disaster additional hazards, like WFP's forecast-based early actions or IFRC's forecast-based financing or START network, as you know, that's anticipatory actions, or IFRC DREP action, shock responsive social safety net programs. Lot of things are happening around India, even in South Asia and Asia Pacific. So those good initiatives we really need to bring in and make some sorts of adjustment in our local context. Most important thing is the localization agenda. We know we are talking a lot since it came out in this grand bargain, and continuously we are speaking, but very little we have achieved it. It is a high time to think, to really move forward, to support the local action, to prevent, prepare, and respond for the disasters. Like I really see the Ganjam district collector for the COVID response. He has really involved the SHGs as CBOs as a frontline workers. So that's really encouraging. Many international agencies already in India have started reviewing the agreement with their local partners, so that more localized response can be done. Some decentralized decision and planning process could be made. Similarly, community volunteer database or resource mobilization system in Red Cross Society through the Red Cross branches at the state level, local level, in CPP program in Bangladesh. It's a very good example. We probably can learn from that. Lastly, I'll say that fair standard for WAS and health facilities, health sector has been recently revised in COVID context. We all humanitarian agencies really need to adapt it, really need to make it as a reference. In all the above, of course, we need to think about some trade-off between life-saving need and spread of COVID-19. We cannot think other way. That's all from my side. Thank you, Sarbjit ji.
Thank you, Tapan. That was really very, very clear. And I think we have a excellent now a list of, I mean, I couldn't even, it's recorded already. So I think we should be recording and also disseminating this widely, and it should feed into our response planning. Unfortunately, we're not early. We are a bit late in terms of, but still it's never too late. And we will ensure that we follow it through. Now I need to move swiftly to back to the grassroots before I call in Mr. Sinha to reflect on all the four inputs. So I'm going to call Luit from RBC in Assam, and also really asking him similar set of insights as I asked Mr. Govind. But give us an insight. Why I'm asking Luit particularly is for the fact that they already have faced one round of flooding in Assam. So tell us, Mr. Luit, how is it working? What are the big challenges on ground? What are the big fears and opportunities to handle this complex situation of COVID plus floods? So over to Luit.
Thank you, sir. So first, I would like to thank everyone and good evening to everyone. When flood and COVID-19 in this situation, if we look into the challenges or the fears, opportunities. First, I will like to flag off is that this time this COVID-19 and
Speaker, when we look at this,
all etc. Yeah. So there is a very very major thing has been cropped up in the Assam. The preparedness level of the community or the house is low this time. We can say it is an inadequate preparedness level at household and community. The mitigation approach that the government reach embankment, repairing the dikes, all these kinds of things are largely avoided by and definitely this is the increased community. And not only the working districts of this is the one reason why this flood this Gwalpara we have come up and followed by the flood in Morigaon. That's the first wave of flood. the mitigation measures that need to be taken up could not have been taken up. And if we come down to the community level, in our working areas, we have that whether it is in Dhamali, it is in Majuli, wherever, or also in Lakhimpur, because of the for last 20 to 25 years. Responders. And being the first responders, they have to take up certain measures at their, but this time it has been largely affected, both at the household level or it is in a, give a simple example for it. So generally what happens in the March or April or in the first half of May, the communities inhabiting in the flood, they come, they repair their houses or take up some these kinds of things. But we have seen that they could not have taken up these kinds of things. It is because of economical crisis they have faced because of the COVID lockdown situation. And the another thing, community measures that this vulnerability used to take is that coming up together to take up some initiative, bridges, repairing of the bridges or repairing of the roads in their own initiative. So if when they're flood or when the early to the community, so they can work out. But this time these are very late the community in more vulnerability this year. Look at the another point. Let's say we look after to the challenges. Another challenges. We are feeling it. Also the discussion with even with the government personnel or the community. How the government is going to managing the infrastructure this time. Managing the infrastructure in sense of time that if there is a flood, is coming up that evacuation is required. So when definitely it will be boat, either it will be country boat or it will be like engine boat. So then, but because again, it means social distancing, precautionary measures, which are much for the COVID. How so there will be shortage of resources, even in the relief camp also. Now, let me point here that the government of Assam has come up with a relief camp management and COVID-19. And if we when we point at but this in case of Dhemaji, we have 95 numbers of camp has been identified by the district authority administration. In the context of Assam, the relief camps highways or the in the near the highways or in the places which are easily accessible for the response mechanism. The people who take shelter generally have to take shelter in the schools or the small school buildings or community. That generally that buildings remains in these camps are not takes up. These are not recognized as a designated camp. Here may be so effects of COVID-19 or all this. This relief camp is not going to reach this camp. Safe areas like the raised platform or the small schools. That's this will be these relief guidelines will not reach. So so there will be definitely infrastructure that will be take place. Look into the things that what is has been perceived one that challenges also the challenge actually it is a fear how we are going to deal. So according to the if we see this all the reverse migrants we are coming into the state they put into 7 days institutional quarantine followed by home quarantine. So in going on and we are definitely this reverse migration will take place up to by it is not coming to end of June or something like carry on. It will be go on till like something like that. And definitely how we are going to manage this home quarantine persons because they need to be kept isolated. Should be kept isolated. The home quarantine, the whole house has been quarantined. So on how we are going to manage these persons who are put into home quarantine. Then another this is the
Luit, we need to wind up your answer. Yeah. Hello.
हेलो
इसको अभी थोड़ा सा क्लोज करूंगा मैं आपके, है ना. अब नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पे आएंगे तो फिर then we'll take more inputs. So thank you, Luit. I think it was exceptional. I think we got lots of insights into what's happening in Assam and what are the challenges, and particularly how COVID has led to a loss of community and family level resilience, and investment in preparedness has been low. And also you have outlined the major challenges in implementing some of the policies, decisions on relief camps and transportation, etc. So thank you very much. And now I will invite our guru and senior leader in humanitarian sector, Anil Sinha ji. Sinha sir.
Ji.
One of the things which India has experimented with hasn't been into the cluster system till now, which means that the NGOs and the other civil society actors, their response is not factored into the national response plan or a strategy. Many times we face this problem that in certain states NGOs remain outside the humanitarian whatever humanitarian system that exists there. So what would be your recipe for strengthening the systemic capacity to make available a standard mechanism for participation of range of stakeholders in preparedness as well as response? So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarbjit. It is always a pleasure to meet you, to interact with you, to hear you. And I would also like to thank right in the beginning Sphere and the wonderful COVID Academy, which has been created in collaboration with many organizations. I think it's already doing a wonderful job. Having said that, I'm very happy that this webinar or the training program has been organized of dealing or coping with floods in the light of COVID, 2019. I somehow prefer to call it 2019 because if we say COVID-19, 19, then the question comes to my mind, was there COVID-18? Was there COVID-17? No, there was not 18, not 17, not 16. We should say 2019, and that is my advice to WHO also, maybe through Tapan, if it can be conveyed. We must have 2019 because UN describes this time as the COVID era. We are already, and era is something, I'm sure COVID, the way it has happened, fast, furious, intimidating, colossal kind of impact all over the world. And I think whole world and the economy and the society has been shaken. We are going to really take time to come back to some stable kind of a position and move ahead. I'm sure that would happen. But then now, given this kind of a situation, I'm sure we are going to talk of COVID even 50 years hence, like we talk of World War I and II, etc., etc. Now, having said this, coming back to your question directly of involvement of the civil society, NGOs, and all that, I was thinking about it. I think there is something very, very crucial. After having served in the public administration government for nearly 30, 40 years, I think one thing which everyone in the government must realize, that whatever powers you may have legally, you can have all kinds of powers legally, but then in practical senses, there are limitations which the government has. and which is legitimate. It happens everywhere. This is not a criticism. In fact, we talk of maximum governance and minimum government, So in that kind of a scenario also, I think there is a legitimate space which is taken and filled by the civil society and the non-governmental organizations, international NGOs, etc., etc. I think time and again, if we look at the history of various disasters, other things which have happened, their role is very well recognized. They have their roots. There are NGOs which are working in various places for 30 years, 40 years. If I will just take one example, normally one shouldn't mention a name, but one can mention any number of names. Apart from all the colleagues, Bhanu and others, Bhanu I have known for maybe 30 years, Godaful Environmental Action Group, for last 40 years it has been. So imagine the kind of a rapport and the relationship and the equation which they have with the local community, I think that needs to be recognized, and government must, give them a due place and really collaborate, extend its hands, to bring them on board, and then really synergize, the capacities and the skills and the experiences of both the sides. In fact, Niti Ayog, I think a couple of weeks back, the government, in fact, set up, I think, 11 empowered groups. One of them was headed by the Niti Ayog, and where one of the tasks or the activities was involvement of the civil society and the non-governmental organization. I have not really followed it in general, but my understanding is that perhaps it didn't really, was successful. Perhaps some consultations were held, but not as much of pushing, and getting the NGOs, large number of NGOs on board. I also know of the fact, having worked in the district and the grassroots level, that government does have certain apprehensions, because there are NGOs and NGOs. But then, that can't be the reason for the government to really shun out, and make it social distancing with the NGOs. Not at all. Not at all. I don't think that's a place to really observe social distancing. In the light of what you said, Sarbjit, I was just looking at Disaster Management Act, And let me point out, because that is the very clear, wonderful legal framework, structure which we have in our country. And it's been 15 years, since it has been there. So it's not very new. And in fact, in the current pandemic, if we look, for the first time, this act has been used extensively, apart from the Epidemics Act. Every order which has been issued by NDMA, or the advice issued by the NDMA to the Ministry of Home Affairs, or the order issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs, signed by the Home Secretary, quotes, and refers and invokes a certain section 10 or whatever, of the Disaster Management Act, including 10 penal sections 51 to 60. So I have never ever seen such an extensive use of the Disaster Management Act. Therefore, I just took a look, because you have sent the question. Now, section 24J, which I think deals with the state disaster, state plans, SDMAs, etc. That talks of NGOs, but that talks of NGOs in a different tone. It says to ensure that NGOs work in an equitable manner, etc., etc. So there is an element of distrust, which has gone into the drafting of this part of the section. The second, which is very important, is about the district plan. In fact, the powers and functions of the District Disaster Management Authority, which I can say they are the most important authority of the three, the national and the state and the district, because ultimately, say, if it is floods and COVID, ultimate management, at the grassroots level, community involvement and everything is taking place at that level. It is at the national level. You can have policies, you can have directives, and the state can, supplement. Now, so therefore, DDMA section 30, 28, subsection 28, mentions about encouraging NGOs, which is very good. But then I think it doesn't really capture the potential, tremendous potential, tremendous expertise these organizations come with, you see. I would say that on going through this, I find that there is a little bit of a weakness in this whole construction. And maybe, of course, there are arguments that can everything be put in the act. And yes, the answer is that perhaps not everything can be put in the act. But then the frame of the things is that after the act, you make rules, and what is left in the act or what is not fully specified into the act then should be addressed by the rules. So here is a case where either we amend the act, maybe that is the best course, I would say, and give the due space and the recognition of the NGOs without repeating because of the time constraints. Or if for some reason it cannot be done or till it can be done, I think we should immediately get into the rules. And even if the rules can't be made, the third thing is that have guidelines, you see. A lot of government and government work, happens on based on guidelines and directives. So I think that needs to be done. There are some states where I hear that, they have not really involved, which makes me sad because, even if it is difficult, but so what? Governments are not really supposed to take on only the easy things. So I think this is what I would say. And then immediately what needs to be done, you see, to deal with this kind of a crisis where multiple hazards are intersecting with each other, and they're intersecting, in a very conflicting way. There's a whole lot of dilemma, you see, between COVID, which requires a certain do's and don'ts, and flood, which requires do's and don'ts, which are just opposite of that, you see. So therefore, I think it is very, very important, to review and reassess the risk. That is the first thing which the state governments and the district administration, which are prone to floods and highly prone to floods, like 28 districts in Bihar, likewise there are categorizations in other states, they should undertake, Of course, there are many other points about states, SDMAs, DDMAs, Panchayati Raj institutions, ULBs, and then the leadership matters. Let me just end my first round by saying that leadership matters. And I think this is where we should recognize women leadership. Women leadership in these kinds of situations can be very, very crucial. We have seen it at global level, but there are any number of examples at the local level also where women leadership have made all the differences. So let me end my first round, Sarbjit. Yeah, I can come back later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sinha Saab. I think it couldn't have been more clear. And thanks for invoking the Disaster Management Act, also giving us insights into the specific sections and weaknesses therein. And I think I've taken a good notes of that. And you concluding with this idea of leadership. I think leadership, particularly women's leadership, can be very, very transformative. And I think the previous panel, I had a good opportunity to lead with 5 women leaders from grassroots level. And I think everyone was enthused by the amount of transformative work they have done in their drought-prone villages, and very impressive indeed. So thank you, sir. And now we'll move to you. I need to thank you more for the fact that you really touched on a very touchy subject on which not much is being discussed, and we still need to have a little more open discussion nationally and at state level. And I think very, very thankful to you to be very open, and your comments were very well taken. Now I'll go back to Mr. Govind, and Mr. Govind actually towards the end of his presentation concluded by saying that there are lots of gaps, in knowledge, awareness, etc., etc. So quickly, Mr. Govind, if you could sort of go back to your list of gaps and list them clearly, so that the NGOs and other government agencies could make plans around them. So over to you for give us a quick sort of a list of challenges that exist.
It is okay, but before going to gap, I want to share here what type of fairness is generated within the community.
Can you be a
First is
little
increase.
louder? Can you be a little louder?
Yeah, what type of fairness? What type of fairness generated in the community? Increasing community anxiety due to social and economical discrimination. And second is hopeless to survive. People are now completely hopeless. You are audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes. You are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, yes, sir. It is completely hopeless to survive. How to survive? This is the basically second thing. And last one is fear to self-care, health and a safety net. Now people's in the dilemma situation, they are losing their safety nets now. You see the migrant, they are not able to return. If they return, they are 100% not able to return. They lose their job. Farmers, they lose their harvest, cultivation. So future course, they are not able to cultivate. So this is the fairness already created. To address the fairness, we should start the creating awareness within the community and change towards change the mindset towards positiveness and give them some technique, some education, some awareness, some orientation for the better survival. This is the basically to address the challenges and see the gaps. Second big thing is the government mechanism should be mobilized. You see, lot of activities, lot of programs now declared by the government. How that type of support will reach the doorstep of the community? I have already mentioned in my message. Basically, to address the survivability is a question now, and all level, every level. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Govind. That was very succinct and very. I think you these are very important thoughts. That hopelessness and people not able to see the reason for survival and not able to see the hope. I think that's an important area into which NGOs can make a huge contribution and address the simple things like the working of social protection schemes. You mentioned about that, but social protection schemes don't start working, or people don't access social protection schemes readily, partly because the gap between the government and the illiteracy and the lack of knowledge about social protection schemes. This is again another area where NGOs can play a huge facilitative role, so that people can use the social protection schemes in a little more predictable manner. Thank you very much for that. And now I'll move on back to Dr. Bhanu. Dr. Bhanu, you can definitely start where you left, but I would also love to hear a little bit more from you as a IAG convener. So, any new efforts you are observing in India or elsewhere in networking to ensure delivery of humanitarian response in the complex context of COVID and floods? So, over to you, Dr. Bhanu. Dr. Bhanu, are you muted or just check?
I can.
Yeah. Sorry. Out of enthusiasm, I think I did not unmute. So I think very nicely you have made things simple. And just before saying all those things, only two things I would like to add more. that the powers of DDMA is very, very good. As I was hearing Sinha Saab, one request with Sinha Saab is that while doing, I mean, 2 days back, I had a meeting with the BDO and entire block development system. And I found that in our entire revenue specialized system, the development or DRR context is given second importance or less importance, because CDO is not involved mostly at district level and BDO at block level. So this entire development context is missing, because that was I was exploring in one meeting, because SDMA UP is thinking that unless village plan is properly developed, village disaster management plan or panchayat disaster management plan, district disaster management plan is not giving the result what it should have been given, because there is less understanding of village. So keeping that context, I think the whole DRR context or development context is of great significance, which needs to be addressed. So that is one important thing. I thought if I start getting the other things, I might miss it. So that is one request to respected Sinha Saab. Second thing is women leadership. That is very important thing, and SDMA UP and IAG UP, they have gone mutual understanding MOU with Lucknow University to facilitate the entire process of education system, inculcating curriculum of DRR and response and awareness building to all graduates and undergraduate students, including teachers and non-teaching staff of the university and education institutions. So go around 10-point agenda of Prime Minister, and how the National Disaster Management Plan has been designed. So maybe there are certain strengths in national plan, maybe there are some weaknesses also in national plan, but how to integrate these two and go with the vision of nation as mentioned in 10-point agenda. And women leadership is one of the important aspects of that 10-point agenda. So I'm very happy. And these two things are being taken care in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, that's why I mentioned it here. SDMA UP is taking lead in this process and educating people. Now, we had a meeting also with the department, this Director General Health Services, Health and Family Welfare Services, who is in charge for this communicable disease also. Now, the training and capacity building of entire gamut, how community should take it, I think that is on high rise, and that has to be taken very seriously. And it is now emerging as a good and best practice in the state. The most important thing I have seen, IAG Kerala, they have been working on both with government, and I would like to just inform people, those who are not very much informed, that in Kerala, the doubling rate of COVID sick persons is more than 72 days, whereas national average is 14 to 15 days. So that is very important. Or at certain places, in certain areas, even it is 7 days, 6 to 7 days. So how this entire doubling period is reduced by community involvement, that is very important thing, because 3 districts were studied one district from Rajasthan, one district from Uttar Pradesh, and one district from Kerala. And we found that in all that study, Rajasthan and UP districts, they were governed very strictly. All strict norms were followed, but the cases did not go down. The confidence of migrants did not come up. They did not gain anything out of it, and they were, they were in distress rather. The movements were in distress. Movements were seen. But same thing in Kerala, it was not seen. They were relaxed because all community people were involved, all civil society members were taking charge of it, and people were very confident. I was hearing in a few days back, a few weeks back rather, you can say, the IAG Maharashtra, IAG Madhya Pradesh, and IAG Chhattisgarh. Sinha Sahab rightly mentioned that civil society's role is not perceived, or it is not utilized. It's very, very underutilized in this process. But even in those places, Bihar, maybe it is Bihar, maybe it is Maharashtra, maybe it is Madhya Pradesh, maybe Delhi, where cases are in abundance, and it's going very fast. Doubling rate is going very fast. It's going up, up and up, and highly populated. This population density is very high. Somehow things are not happening. So to me, it is very important that these aspects, these things should be taken in account. As you referred, in many countries, civil society and government together, they are supporting the entire process in such a way. Maybe you can take example of Korea, maybe you can take example of other European countries where the doubling rate has been reduced, and we say the cases which are asymptomatic, because of the education to community and boosting their immune system, taking right kind of diet, taking proper rest, and educating people for social distancing, then social distancing, washing hand, and using mask. It's working very well. Even use of mask, which is very important. It is said that even only mask also can.
We have to.
Yeah. I'm going to finish up the last sentence, sir. Using mask only can reduce the entire thing, and it can manage COVID if it is done by everybody. So I'll stop it here. There are many things to be commented, but I think it's very, very important. And this move, the entire move, is definitely going to support the system. Definitely going to take. We have to work together. We have to join hand in hand with the government, and that is my key word for this today's discussion.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Badal.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think I many of ideas. There were so many of them. We will get into them a little later, maybe when I sum up. Now I'll call upon Tapan Mahapatra again. And Tapan, again, in continuity of where you left, you were talking about the use of technology, etc. Now the question to you would be: what are the new technology that you are seeing or promoting as a donor or improving effectiveness and efficiency of response? So over to you, Tapan.
Thank you, Sarbjit. Again, I know that's we are running out of time, and to just summarize in very quick few points, that's role of information management and innovation technology is no longer new in India. The humanitarian organization since long has been using it in the form of crowdsourcing, in the form of the mobile technology like FOBO, data collection. We are using social networking services and systems. And last couple of years, we have plenty of examples how social media can save the life, whether it's in Kerala, whether it's in COVID case, or in every disaster we find hundreds of people gets assistance in right time due to the social media. So probably it's a high time we need to think further to encase what we are doing it and capitalize with the new good examples around the corners. So I'll give few good examples which probably can help us to develop it further. If I start saying that we have in India, we have almost 500 million smartphones, which contributes almost 40% of the populations having the access of the smartphone. And so far in humanitarian system, we were using only few with our volunteers. Probably this is a big, huge resource. We can trap it and go to this community level to get feedback, data collections, and probably make it further more effective and ground-based response systems, effective response system. If I see that's, if I bring one example from this WFP's mobile vulnerability analysis mapping, which is called a VAM mapping for the food security, food security program, which almost in 30 countries they are running it, and millions of people are using it to have a both way communications to track the food security, nutrition, and market trends in real time, and provide instant feedback to millions. And this has helped the WFP annually save almost $5 million US. And it's a very good example, instant way, and similarly, it can be adapted in crisis situations. Probably we can learn from our WFP colleagues here and make some sorts of move on that connections. We have seen how drone or unmanned aerial vehicles has helped in Nepal, how it has helped in tracking the refugee coming from Myanmar to Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. And there are many other examples. UAV has been really life-saving needs, and immediately for the quick response, quick damage assessment. I understand in India there are security concerns. Yes, probably more on the border side, but in mainland probably we can talk about with the authorities and make some sorts of some such efforts, because drones are becoming more feasible for humanitarian agencies. Lastly, I'll say that's like American Red Cross in their approach. Actually, they have tied up with the ESRI data visual system platform to track the floodings, to identify the resources availability. And we have a huge benefit, advantage in that, being Bhuvan or disaster management services of ISRO. We can really trap that, we can make some collaboration with that system and make our response more effective. Probably all humanitarian agencies can make gain lot of their services from the Bhuvan service. With that, I'll stop it. Thank you.
Tapan, again, you listen to very specifics of WFP resources and the resources. I think great. One say that silver linings of COVID crisis.
I can't hear you clearly. Your voice is getting lost, sir.
I can't hear Sarbjit, sir. Sir, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I had muted my. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Better. Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that one of the silver linings of the COVID crisis is the amount, the penetration of technology to the grassroots levels, and the comfort level of people to use technology, particularly the video conferencing facilities. So there is a huge opportunity which has come up, and this needs a strategic thinking, as Tapan was mentioning, to bring everything together. And I also think that technology use also requires coordination, because if many agencies are already using certain things, but there is so much of duplication happening, so many of agencies developing their own apps and own tools, that I think many we fail to make the best of it. So I guess we will retain that as an important learning from our discussion. Now we'll go back to Luit and check with him. So he couldn't finish his first answer. I think we'll give him time to reflect more on the gaps in preparedness, and particularly in the Assam context, where he mentioned that the community resilience and the system resilience is relatively low, and also migrant crisis is becoming a little more dynamic. We are going to see more migrant movement in the coming months. So over to Luit for reflecting further on the gaps in preparedness.
Hello.
Yeah, Luit, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Hello.
Go ahead, Luit.
Yeah, I'm hearing you right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question to you was that um, what are the key gaps in preparedness, specifically in Assam? लुईत आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
Oh.
If Luit is not able to hear us, let's move to Mr. Sinha. Sinha Saab, where you left in the previous question on engagement of NGOs and other stakeholders. One of the reflections you made was that they can be important efficient multipliers.
Sorry, didn't hear you, Sarbjit. One of the reflections. After that, I missed your word.
One of the important reflections you made was that NGOs can be part of the opportunity to multiply efficiency. For example, right now the hospitals are running out of capacity. How can NGOs move in to multiply the capacity, or the civil society could? But the problem is that despite the fact that we have good intentions of involving NGOs, as you mentioned earlier, the Niti Aayog had given clear directions. There's an empowered group to do that. But such big decisions cannot be implemented when the crisis has already manifested. If we were not practicing these things in normal times, it cannot happen all of a sudden. So how do we move towards establishing a national and a state level system, and where there is a consensus on the role of NGOs and stakeholders? And so I would love to hear you from a longer term perspective, not only for the COVID. I know for COVID we are late in terms of establishing a system, but for long term, what are the ways? How do we establish a system?
Okay, thank you, Sarbjit. You see, just a couple of things in a broader perspective is that what I had written was Churchill once said, "Never waste a crisis," which, in our words, disaster parlance, we have been saying that every disaster offers an opportunity. It offers an opportunity, a window of opportunity to build and rebuild and to build back better. You see, I would say. Not to create a new risk, not to recreate a risk which existed earlier, Now, with this, even though the speed of this has been, as I said, very fast and furious, literally intimidating, yet there are many lessons, you see. One lesson is that lockdown pays. Several countries have had various experiences, but lockdown pays. Second is that hygiene is something which is very, very, helpful, you see. And this has been in our culture. This has, we have, and I'm sure every Indian in the schools, etc. And now, fortunately, Government of India has a program on hygiene, sanitation, all that. We must really build on that. So you see, we are also, apart from learning lessons, we are also rediscovering the old values, you see. Let us remember that we are rediscovering old values. So there is a lot of value in the old values. And we must not really do away with that. We must look at that in all intent and seriousness and sincerity and really try to learn from that. Now, coming to this COVID and this and beyond, let me say that the other principle of disaster planning is expect the unexpected. I think when we do a webinar like this, there is a linear combination which we are keeping in mind, that is COVID intersecting with flood or vice versa. But let me tell you, the situation can be far worse. You see, it can be more multiple disasters. There have been cases, Cyclone Harold in Pacific, Canada, Ottawa floods, Vizag gas leak happened, then heat wave in India, locust attack in India. We have had cyclone on both the coast, and plus we have been in a way lucky. If we have not had more, in fact, we have had more migrant crisis, etc., etc. So the situation is not going to be as simple as one may think. So we must keep this in mind, that expect the unexpected. Now, in this kind of a situation, how do you really proceed ahead? What is the kind of a perspective? Let me go back to the sections of, because not everyone may have seen it. You see, the section 24 of Disaster Management Act, which deals with the state plan, state powers, 24J talks of ensure that non-governmental organizations carry out their activities in an equitable and non-discriminatory manner. I was thinking that while one view is that there is a flaw in this, there is a trust deficit in the drafting of this. But then I was also thinking, why did it come, you see? And let me tell you, this was drafted way back in and passed by Parliament in 2005. So it cannot be linked to the current narrative, you see. So even in 2005, which is, 15 years back, you see, there this kind of a paradigm existed, you see. So which means that one lesson to be learned by the civil society and the NGOs is that, look, you work, it is very good and all that, but in this society, you are also under a watch, and what is really required. And I have seen, these kinds of things in Odisha super cyclone and Gujarat earthquake, where I had personally been there, that sometimes, they tend to become little discriminatory. An NGO belonging to a certain community, feeding only a certain community, etc. etc. That's one lesson I thought. The second is, which is an enabling clause, I would say, is that, and we should take advantage of that. This relates to the next chapter, which is the district authority, which is, I think, chapter 4. You see, and here this section 30 and 28 says, let me read it. I think it will be good for listeners, participants, and to go on record. It says, encourage the involvement of non-governmental organizations and voluntary social welfare institutions working at the grassroots level in the district for disaster management. So there is a provision, as I said, and these are the powers and functions of the district authority. Let us also remember, Dr. Bhanu mentioned about the revenue orientation of the local administration, but the district disaster management authority is chaired by district magistrate, which is fine, but the co-chair is Jila Parishad, and Jila Parishad co-chairman is to deal, his mandate is with the development, you see. So you see, I think the Jilla Parishad chairman need to be, they are a part of it and they need to play their role, etc., and bring this developmental paradigm, which Dr. Bhanu felt is sort of missing, you see. I think that will be there. Now, what is really required is that with the, so legally, nothing prevents. You see, the district authorities are not prevented legally. In fact, there is a directive to them. It is their responsibility to encourage the local level non-governmental organizations and other such institutions to involve them in disaster management. So, wherever possible, maybe in one place or the other place there is problem, but let us assume that, fortunately we have a legal framework which supports this. And I think there is need to immediately get into review and reassess the risk, you see. It is very important, because whatever you respond, whatever you prepare and plan depends on your perception and assessment of the risk, you see. The more correct it is, the more correct will be the corresponding response. Maybe there are need to revise the SOPs. Most of the governments and most of the departments have issued SOPs that there is a strong case to revise the SOPs in these kinds of situations. There is a need to take another look at the guidelines and enhance investment in preparedness and planning, you see, which is very, very important. Now, I think there should be another serious look at the functioning of the District Disaster Management Authority. District Disaster Management Authority, unlike the other two authorities at the state level, the national level, the DDMAs have to deal with the whole cycle of disaster management. Neither the SDMA nor the NDMA are charged by law to deal with the whole cycle of disaster management. And yet DDMAs, are perhaps the weakest. You see, no one has looked at their structure, their capacities, their infrastructure, and things like that. So I think that is very important. A EOC, properly functioning, I'm not using the word state of the art because that may become little too heavy and loaded at the district level, but not the usual control room with one phone, etc., but kind of a EOC where different, you talked of coordination. I think you mentioned that. So there is need for various departments at the district level to really come together and collaborate, not coordinate, but go beyond that and really collaborate. And that can happen if you have a proper EOC, that can happen if you have databases, you see. And then, as far as the PRIs, the Panchayati Raj institutions and ULBs are concerned, it is very important to start building their capacity, whatever be the constraints. Constraints will always be there. So let us not talk of constraints, but start building. Let me give a small example. I live in a small, complex here in Gurgaon, about 500 families, and we are having 2 positive cases. Before the Municipal Corporation of Gurgaon could really respond, we have contact tracers, who are certified from Johns Hopkins University. Johns Hopkins University offers course, 5-hour course, 5.5-hour course on contact tracing. And after one, now we have 4 ladies who have done the course. So now we are more confident. We know that our capacity has gone up, internal capacity. So even if MCG takes time, we will be able to do the initial round of contact tracing, etc., etc. So I think that can be done. I'm just mentioning but not elaborating on early warning system and technology. I think Tapan mentioned it very well, drones, etc., etc. What is really needed is a whole ecosystem approach, you see. Whole ecosystem approach. It can't be one aspect or other aspect, one sector or the other aspect, or just 2-3 sectors we think that, well, that will do the job. No, no, no. That will not happen. All of approach, you see, all of government, it is not a situation where one department or 2 departments of what, but all of the governments have to come together, all of society, and all of the world, you see, in terms of vaccine and this and that, etc. So that is very, very important. And when I say all of society, that is where one comes back to the question of leadership once again. And women leadership, I like to once again reiterate humbly, I think they have definitely far more of creativity. And one thing, let us not forget, you see, there are these pandemic and all that. Look at the fear factor which all of us have, tremendous amount of uncertainty which we have. So there is a tremendous amount of emotional management, which needs to be undertaken, you see. It is not a question of just wearing a mask and maintaining distance and things like that. I think there's tremendous amount of emotional management. Look at the children, they have been totally deprived of their, you see, the rights to play and run and do this and meet their friends, go to school, etc. Look at the youngsters, the teenagers. Forget, people like us, isn't it? And so therefore, the whole lot of emotion and emotional management is involved, and that is where again leadership management, leadership of women will be very, very crucial. And well, there are some more points, but I'm aware that we are already past 6, so maybe I'll respond. And well, I think it has been a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I think again a lot of very clear guidance, and I think you identified so many spaces for youth to engage and utilize the Disaster Management Act, and particularly you mentioned that engage with the District Disaster Management Authority. That engagement will create confidence and trust, and that will build a culture of collaboration and an ecosystem. You also mentioned about ecosystem, and where EOCs can be the sort of harbingers of this ecosystem, where all government, all society approach. And finally, I think again, yeah, to the most favorite topics, that how do women leadership um, address this problem, and you mentioned about the whole issue of emotional imbalance and psychosocial support needs, and particularly for children and adolescents. Thank you so much. Now I think a permission, maybe some of the questions, if she may like to read out, which she has analyzed, which are in the chat box. So Valerie, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Sarbjit sir. Let's just take a raised hand first from Professor Sheila Mishra. Ma'am, I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would definitely like to congratulate you all for wonderful panelists and their discussions. I just want to add the angle from an academician point of view. You see, initially when we were students, there was a course called a general English or any other language, which we need to pass before we get our degrees. So can't we do something like this, that a disaster management course needs to be passed from all the higher education students, be it technical or the science or arts, all the streams, they need to have at least one fundamental course on disaster risk management, because it is ultimately the whole society which is going to suffer. So we just can't exclude any single person from this program. and that will, I think, increase the accountability of the society and community also. But that is a long time process, may not be useful in the current COVID scenario. Here, I would be
Your
really
question, like, if you
yeah,
can,
yeah.
if you
Yeah,
direct the
the
question.
question, the question definitely is that can't NDMA just talk to the higher
So,
education
got your question.
ministries? Yeah,
Yeah.
and one thing is that the promotion of the women leadership, because the emotional issues are also there, so they can also be involved right now with the help of all the educational institution, as Dr. Bhanu said, and it will be really great to involve the younger population into mitigating the risk of emotional disaster, at least I can say. So there they will feel involved, and they will also have an opportunity to work and to reduce the COVID problems. So that is my suggestion, to
Thank,
involve the people. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Master Professor Sheila,
Um,
good to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you
mm,
so much.
uh, so shall we take a couple of more questions and then come back to the panelists? Yeah. This question, for sure, Anilji, if you can reflect on Dr. Sheila's intervention. So Valerie, can you take the next question?
Sure. Thank you for that. There is one question. Is flood affected Uttar Pradesh? Sorry. So basically, I'm going to reframe this question. It basically asks that in the context of Uttar Pradesh, which is also prone to floods, will flood increase the problem of laborers and other people in Uttar Pradesh now that they're already facing COVID-19? So.
Okay. So this question, I think we'll direct towards Dr. Bhanu. Okay. Dr. Bhanu, I guess you have noted the question. And
Should I
do we have
respond now
another
itself?
question?
Should I respond now itself?
No, maybe I can just cover all the questions together. So this was in context of Uttar Pradesh. There was also another in context of Bihar, which says how the people of flood-prone areas in Bihar can cope/survive with three major issues or problems. And these three problems have been listed as loss of livelihood due to COVID-19 led lockdown, fear of coronavirus, and coming floods. And they have specified the vulnerable groups as migrant households, communities. So I think these would summarize the three major questions, Sarbjit. So.
Okay. So the third question we would maybe towards Tapan, maybe, no? On the Bihar question, maybe Tapan can take. So we'll go back to Anil Sinhaji for response to the question.
Okay, should I go with it? Sir, migrant and flood.
नहीं, पहले सिन्हा साहब.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Let Dr. Bhanu go ahead. Dr. Bhanu, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you. It's true that migrants who have come in villages or even urban areas also, they are facing lots of problem, and flood is going to create a big problem to them, because most of them are engaged in Manrega, and that Manrega work will not take place during monsoon, heavy monsoon. So that is one place where we really feel what to do, because around in UP, if we say, more than 40 lakh people are working under Manrega. Every day, more than 40 lakh people are doing, 4 million people. And 2/3 is majority of these migrant workers. The second aspect is their livelihood is not the only thing. Their social safety nets, their health or reproductive child health and child education, all that is at stake. So these migrants are getting squeezed, are getting pressure from different dimensions. And the situation we have been discussing, we have discussed this. We had 2 workshops, virtual workshop and then direct person-to-person workshop on this issue. and let's see what best we can do in this state. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Banu. And now we can go to Tapan. Tapan, would you like to address the Bihar question on how people are going to survive in the multi-hazard context?
It's a very tricky questions, but yeah, to my understanding, that's women leadership has proved a lot in the past. Anil Sinhaji really raised that question, so everybody was ignoring it. They are more dedicated, and there is a lot of advantage women taking the things, the gender issues, the protection issues. They understand the human dynamics much better than what others are doing it. And globally, more and more emphasis is being done for the women-led committees, women-led exercises, such exercises. So to me, I fully agree that such things really need to be taken it up for her.
Thank you, Tapan. Now, Anilji, please reflect on that question from
Sure.
Dr. Sheila.
Can Valliri, just repeat, you mentioned three things. One was corona, third was floods, and which was the third thing?
Right, so I'm going to revisit the question. 1 second. So one was loss of livelihood due to COVID-19, fear of coronavirus, and coming floods. And they mentioned the vulnerable groups as migrants and migrant household and communities.
Yeah. I think this is, this is the time, as I said, one is that, Niti Aayog recently, in one of the reviews, I think they made a very good point that they stressed on non-structural measures, you see. Not just this, because when we talk of floods, then there is a lot of structural measure that we talk, but then they made a lot of, the vice chairman, I think, made a lot of emphasis on non-structural measure like flood forecasting, efficient management, procuring, storing medicine, pool of paramedics, this and that, etc., etc. And I think the most important, of course, is the livelihood, you see. Now, before I really come to this, again, one factor which is magnifying, the perceived risk or the impact of risk is emotional. And I think, yes, the emotional thing is also very real. All of us are really suffering from that. So from that point of view, what Dr. Sheila Mishra said, I think that's a very good suggestion that if the government can, like SDME in UP, I'm so happy they have, General Sahi has taken this initiative with Lucknow University. If they can really devise courses, I mean, if there can be a 5-hour course on contact tracing, just one part of it, which makes my complex of 500 families much more confident, because when the cases were detected for 2 days, the Municipal Corporation of Gurgaon was unable to respond, you see, because they are already overwhelmed. So if we keep sitting just like this, waiting for them, it creates more and more of uncertainty and fear in the mind of everyone, because we do not know who else has come in contact with the positive case and who is likely to be affected and who is likely to affect others, you see. But contact tracing has been done in a professional manner by someone certified by John Hopkins, nothing less. You see, now we are sure we have a very professional kind of a crisp and to the point report made, which raises the confidence of everyone. See. So therefore, one point which I would like to really make, and I hope from this forum of sphere, it can go to NDMA and others, that, we should also, there are a lot of courses, of course, we know that, but why not NDMA start sponsoring, creating these kinds of courses, which are the certain number of hour, different levels of courses for different small levels of skills. One need not think, everyone doesn't need to become a big expert of disaster management. There are small things which are needed in times of crisis at the level of in the village and all that. You see. Now the other biggest fear is loss of livelihood. You see. Now loss of livelihood is terrible. Because well, you have a family, you have children, and all that. And therefore, I think there have to be programs which build longer term resilience and sustainability in the societies. You see. Unless until we move towards making societies resilient, which means that in case people, lose a certain livelihood, then they know how to, fall back on another kind of a skill, you see. And therefore, future proofing, to accommodate the risk of multiple hazards, you see, that is very, very important. I know it is easy to say and much, much difficult to do, but then we'll have to think creatively with in a cross ministerial kind of a collaborative situation, harness all the scientific innovations and data, you see, to then come up with solutions in terms of which takes care of your corona fears also, then ensures do's and don'ts also. At the same time, you are able to, I think it is for the state government to to really devise ways, and I think they are into this job. They have done the skill mapping of the migrant labor, which have many states. I think UP have done, Bihar has done, and I'm sure several other states have done the skill mapping of the migrant laborers who have returned to their states in lakhs, you see. Now, if that skill mapping can be then, superimposed on the local areas, and then whatever is can be used over there, or the associated skills, you see, one, you may have a skill, but that may not be, immediately usable, but something, depending on that skill, relating to that skill can be found. So I think these are the kinds of things. I don't think I have very specific answer, because the answers will have to be found out locally in this kind of a situation. Livelihood answers have to be found locally. But I'm talking of the approaches which will perhaps help you. See. I hope this has helped, reply to the question to some extent. Yes, Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Anilji. Valerie, with your permission, I think I would like to conclude now the session. If it's okay, may I sum up?
Right, sir. Right, so we can go ahead and conclude the discussion, please.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think today there's been a fair bit of understanding we developed what's happening at the grassroots level. And I think the loss of livelihoods has become a sort of fountainhead of hopelessness, and the survival needs have come to the force. Investment in preparedness, particularly in Assam, we heard, has been low. The community resilience has been eroded due to a long lockdown and other sort of movement of migrants back to the communities, loss of remittance, etc. So overall, the community resilience is low as of now, and that's a important aspect to be noted by all responders, including the civil society organizations. In response to that, I think there were a number of suggestions for use, particularly from Mr. Govind Dash. The access to social protection schemes has to improve hugely and very fast. And this is where NGOs have huge role and responsibility as well. Tapan showed us, there were so many inputs from him, wonderful inputs. And one of them I would like to underline is the digital transfer of humanitarian cash. Now, that's easier said than done. It needs a lot of preparedness. But it's never too late to get cracking with the preparedness. Early action was noted by a number of them, and the value of localized action, local action, with the help of civil society organizations, CBOs, SHGs, community volunteers. This was underscored by many of you. So I think that's something to be noted. And with respect to pre-positioning, there were specific suggestions made by Dr. Bhanu on why it should be more informed and tightly planned and should be done as locally as possible. Crowdsourcing of information, use of social media we're going to see a lot during these floods. So it's good that we prepare for that. And finally, all the sort of long-standing problems of civil society organizations, engagement in the humanitarian response system. Anil Sinha guided us so beautifully and showed us spaces where we can and engage and build confidence with the government, and particularly the district disaster management authorities. He also mentioned specifically for the engagement of Zilla Parishad people in the DDMAs, and I think that's another beautiful space. And he also mentioned about PRI's role in the addressing the civil humanitarian crisis. And I think most of you agreed on the nature of impact, which is prolonged sort of isolation due to lockdown and hopelessness, etc., has had a huge impact on the mental health and the confidence of people. And this is where I think majority of you agreed that women's leadership in addressing the emotional issues can be an important sort of antidote to the hopelessness that exists. And from my side, I would like to add that communicating with communities, particularly women, is an important aspect to be considered, and that communication and engagement with the communities can be an important solution spaces to address some of the problems that have been created, and we are seeing that they might become acute during floods or any other hazard which might manifest. So thank you so much. I think I would close by thanking all of you, Dr. Anil Sinha, Tapan, Govind, Luit, we missed you in between, and Dr. Bhanu, of course, a friend from IIG UP. And thank you, Valerie, for helping us with all the coordination and logistics and all the questions that came from the participants. Thanks for your active listening and contribution to the dialogue. So over to you, Valerie, for making the final comments and announcements.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible because I'm struggling with some rain and thunderstorm in the area. So I sincerely hope I'm audible to everybody.
Yes, you're clear.
Yes,
Great.
we can see you also.
Great. So here are a few administrative announcements. To receive your certificate of participation for this panel discussion, please visit the website www.sphereindiacovid19academy.org. After 24 hours, you will see a button of certificate next to the session name. Click there, enter your registered email ID, and you'll be able to download your certificate. I would also like to take this opportunity to announce our next session, which is happening tomorrow from 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m., which will be on integrated response in the context of COVID-19. So we hope to see you for that session as well. For any queries, please feel free to write to us at covid19academy@sphereindia.org.in. If you have any suggestions, queries, you please feel free to write to us. With that, I wish all of you a very safe evening. I thank our panelists and our moderator once again. And stay safe, everybody, and have a beautiful evening. Please take care.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Valerie, and thank you, Samazat.
Thank you so much. Wonderful seeing all of you. Wonderful discussion. God bless.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Valerie, are you on the banks of Ganges?
No, sir, I am on the banks of Bay of Bengal.
Ah, okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, भानुजी फिर बात होगी.